Welcome back to our channel, where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on Catherine, Princess of Wales, and her royal family. We provide you with the exciting news. At 77, King Charles's heartbreaking confession confirms all rumors of his child shocks. Everyone following a protracted period of time and a combination of long-standing customs and contemporary aspirations, King Charles III was finally crowned. When the St. Edward's crown was placed on his head, it signified that the power had at long last been transferred to him, and that a new Carolean period had just started. On the other hand, the ceremony was accompanied by a ghost for the millions of people who were watching it from all around the world. This ghost was the memory of Diana, Princess of Wales, and the tragic love story that almost brought the House of Windsor to its knees. It is now the king, who is 77 years old, who sits on the throne that was intended for him, Queen Camilla. The woman he had a romantic relationship with for almost half a century is seated next to him. It seems to be the last chapter in a story of a love that endured despite the presence of controversy, etiquette, and criticism from the general public. When you look beyond the surface of royal stability, however, you will find that the truth is far more intricate and awful than what you perceive. His former marriage, which was distinguished by a dreadful secret that was for a time maintained in plain sight, set the foundation for Charles's reign, which was built on the ruins of his previous marriage. The plot of this story is not limited to a love triangle. It recounts the story of how a long-suppressed truth, which Charles himself acknowledged decades earlier, brought about a transformation that would permanently alter the British monarchy. The book examines how the prince's personal issues became a national issue, as well as how the consequences of his actions now have an impact on his sons, his public image, and the very legitimacy of his reign. After being muttered and then screamed, the secret is now an indelible part of history and a stain on the crown that he wears. It was first whispered after it was yelled. A guide to creating a soft prince in a world that is tough. It is necessary to first understand the child who is deprived of the kingdom in order to comprehend the man who is prepared to put the kingdom at jeopardy for love. Before he became the Stoic king, Charles was referred to as the soft prince on several occasions. In a family and an institution that placed a premium on stoicism and emotional reserve on the highest possible level, he stood out as an exception. In addition to being sensitive and reflective, he had a tendency to have emotional outbursts, which caused the older generation, particularly his father, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, to feel concerned. Philip, a parent who had gone through war and exile, came to the conclusion that his son's sensitivity was not a strength, but rather a weakness at the time. Specifically, he was intent on beating the softness out of him. The severe method that he intended to use in order to do this was to send him to Gordonstoun, which is a boarding school in Scotland that is well known for its difficult curriculum. Kurt Hahn, the founder of the institution, believed that putting adolescents through difficult physical difficulties would help them become more resilient. In a subsequent interview, Charles would describe the situation to his biographer Jonathan Dimbleby as being comparable to Colditz in kilts. Due to the fact that he was by himself and desired to return home, the young prince became a frequent target for bullies. His position as a member of the royal family did not protect him. Rather, it made him a more visible target. He sent letters to his parents pleading with them to take him away, but they would not allow him to go. While Queen Elizabeth II was preoccupied with the duties that came with being a young queen, Prince Philip was certain that hard love would make an excellent candidate for the position of king. Instead, it came dangerously close to breaking a child. While at Gordonstoun, Charles experienced a great deal of loneliness and had a strong desire to get the affection and acceptance that he had never received from his parents. This emotional void would eventually become the most significant weakness in his life, a desire that would ultimately lead him into one of the most disastrous love triangles in the history of the modern era. However, this gentle prince had a steely will that was hidden deep inside him. The same sensitivity that made him a target also gave him a great desire to disprove his critics and show them that they were wrong. The media made fun of him, and even some members of the armed forces expressed their uncertainty about whether or not he has sufficient strength. In response, Charles threw himself wholeheartedly into his job in the military with an incredible amount of fervor. After enlisting in the Royal Air Force, he went on to join the Royal Navy, where he was inspired to perform exceptionally well. He was taken aback by his flying instructors. It was a unique and natural talent for flight that the soft prince had. He was not only competent, he had a great deal of skill. Charles was reported to have an innate knowledge of flying that could not be taught according to one of the training instructors. This was not something that Charles performed for the sake of appearances. Rather, he pushed himself to his limits and earned his wings. Additionally, he was awarded the Double Diamond Honor, which is presented to the pilot who is deemed to be the finest in his category. The sky was under his command, and he was brave and resolute in his pursuit of knowledge. However, while he was on the ground, his heart was still a location that he was unable to access. The individual who was raised to be dependent on love never managed to escape that shadow. This persistent need for emotional security was the driving force behind his eventual breakdown. The Tangled Beginning, a fateful choice between two sisters. The official story of how Charles and Diana met is a cleaned-up version of what really happened, which was far messier. It wasn't a straightforward meeting, as in a fairy tale. It was a period full of royal stress and complicated connections. In 1977, Charles first saw Lady Diana Spencer. He met her when she was 16 years old and full of life and charm during a shooting party at Althorpe, her family's ancestral estate. Lady Sarah Spencer, her elder sister, was dating him at the time, therefore he was there as her guest. Charles was instantly drawn to Diana's bubbly spirit, but his official attention was still on Sarah. They went to public events and polo tournaments, acting like a good royal couple. But behind the scenes, the link wasn't really strong. During this time, a very important event happened when I went to the Spencer estate. Charles asked Diana to come to a gallery with him so they could look at it alone away from the other guests. Something changed in that peaceful area. He had never had a discussion flow so easily before. She paid close attention, smiled at his self-deprecating quips, and made him feel seen and understood in a manner that sliced through the stiff formality of his existence. For a brief time, he wasn't the heir to the kingdom. He was simply a guy having fun with a beautiful young lady. Sarah's shockingly honest chat with the press made the already fragile chance of a relationship even harder. She may have seen her sister as a competitor, or just been tired of being in the royal limelight. She said, "I'm not in love with Prince Charles." And then she said she would never marry anybody she didn't love, be he the dustman or the King of England. That was the end of her connection with the prince. Sarah had opened a door for her younger sister without meaning to, but Charles's heart was already taken when he started to think about the young Diana. Camilla Parker Bowles was another lady who was always there for him no matter where he went. They had a strong, passionate tie that had been formed years before and could not be broken by time distance or royal duty. Camilla was the one person who could understand him, push him, and make him laugh. For Charles, she wasn't simply a lover. She was his soulmate, the one person he could be completely honest with. This hazardous, unresolved relationship loomed over the growing romance with Diana like a thundercloud. The romance was more out of responsibility than love. The doomed engagement and a heartbreaking discovery. Charles switched his focus back to Diana when his family and the public put a lot of pressure on him to find a good wife and have a child. On paper, she was perfect. An aristocrat with a spotless family history, a Protestant, and most importantly, a virgin. Their relationship was a whirlwind that lasted just 6 months. Diana, who was just 20, and caught up in the ideal, thought she had won the love of her prince. She was too young and in love to recognize the bad indications. The first sign of trouble came during their interview for the job. When a reporter inquired whether they were in love, Diana smiled and said, "Of course." Charles's answer was a frightening hint of what was to come. He continued with a sarcastic, distant smirk, "Whatever in love means." People thought it was an odd philosophical joke. It was a public humiliation for Diana, a sharp spray of reality that left her shocked and hurt. Things were about to get worse. Diana found something out only days before the wedding that wrecked her beautiful fantasy. She spotted a parcel in a courtier's office that held a bracelet that Charles had requested. Not for her. It was a present for Camilla with the letters G and F on it, which stand for Gladys and Fred, their confidential close nicknames for each other. It hit me hard to realize. The guy she was about to marry was bringing another lady a gift of affection as a goodbye. Andrew Morton, her biographer, and the person she covertly worked with on the book Diana, Her True Story, says she was heartbroken. She told her sisters that she couldn't go through with it since she was humiliated and angry. She thought the wedding was a fake, but the royal machine was already in action. The invites had been issued, global leaders had verified that they would be there, and the security for an event of this size had been set. The British economy was counting on the big event across the world. Her family and his told her that her worries were just pre-wedding nerves. They told her that the bracelet was only a nice way to say goodbye to an old sweetheart. They told her that Camilla would be gone after the vows were said. Diana knew it was a lie. She headed toward the altar feeling trapped by obligation and the weight of the world's expectations. She was carrying a secret that was already poisoning her heart. The wedding of the century. A night of tragedy. Diana's life fell apart totally the night before her wedding. It wasn't only about the jewelry or worries that wouldn't go away. Charles went to his bride-to-be in a moment of brutal honesty or maybe terror. Diana subsequently told her close friends that he confessed to something she couldn't believe. He said that he cared a lot about her, but he didn't love her, as a husband should love his wife. People who knew the princess say that Charles cried that night, but not for his future wife. He cried for the lady he had to leave behind. The future King of England was crying for Camilla. Diana crushed voiced the one question that mattered. Why are you marrying me if you don't love me? His response was as frigid as it was practical. He spoke about loyalty to the crown, the necessity for an heir, and how a man like him couldn't afford to fall in love. Diana had an option that night that was impossible: leave and start the biggest royal scandal in 100 years, or go through with the marriage, hoping without hope that one day she may earn his love. She decided to remain. It was a choice that would cost her everything. The wedding of the century drew in 750 million people on July 29, 1981. They saw a beautiful bride in a stunning dress and a princess who seemed shy walking into a fantasy. But for those who were paying attention, the Fishers were already there. Diana didn't say the typical vow to obey her husband as a little act of disobedience. Charles made a Freudian slip when he botched his words and said he would share thy goods with her instead of my worldly goods. The famous kiss on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, which has been shown over and over again as a sign of love, was really embarrassing. Diana leaned in eagerly as Charles gave her a stiff, unsure kiss. Throughout the day, cameras recorded brief moments when her grin faded and her eyes were heavy with grief that the joyful audience couldn't see. The world was celebrating a fairy tale, but the bride was suffering a nightmare. The honeymoon, which was supposed to be a quiet getaway, was apparently ruined by Camilla's presence. Diana spotted Charles wearing cufflinks with interwoven C's on them, which were another present from his ex-girlfriend. She also saw pictures of Camilla fall out of his journal. The storybook ended before it ever started. The War of the Waleses and a public apology. Diana worked hard at her royal responsibilities because she wanted to be the best princess she could be. She had 2 boys, Prince William and Prince Harry, who were the heir and a spare that Charles needed. She thought that if she did her part, Charles would adore her. But eventually, her darkest worries came true. Charles had never really broken up with Camilla. The marriage turned into a chilly conflict that happened behind palace walls. Diana, who was alone and very unhappy, developed bulimia, an eating condition that she later said was a sign of how deeply she was hurting emotionally. The couple's combined trips turned into public displays of stress, and the photographers who followed them could see how unhappy they were. The press, which had earlier made up the fairy tale, now avidly reported on its end, calling the fight the War of the Waleses. The last public embarrassment occurred when covertly recorded phone calls between Charles and Camilla from 1989 were leaked. This controversy was called Camillagate. The sensitive, very personal nature of their communication made it clear how strong their connection was. It was the worst betrayal for Diana, and the whole world heard it. The monarchy had to do something because it was losing credibility. But Charles was the one who hit next. The Prince of Wales admitted to his crime in a famous TV interview with Jonathan Dimbleby in 1994. Charles confesses to cheating on his wife when questioned whether he had been faithful and honorable to her. He said he had been loyal until it broke down beyond repair, even though we both tried. He didn't say he was sorry. Instead of seeing the affair with Camilla as a betrayal, he saw it as a way to go back to a close and lasting relationship after his marriage failed. He was basically blaming the marriage's demise on what he did, which made Diana seem like a collaborator in its failure. Diana didn't merely confess, she planned to destroy the public. The guy who had vowed to love and care for her was now saying that she was unlovable. The palace made their official split public within a few months. Diana's revenge and the making of a martyr. Charles made a big mistake if he imagined that his confession would change the story. He didn't realize how strong Diana was, or how many people loved her. She resolved to fight back, not with palace politics, but with her own truth when she was backed into a corner. In 1995, she had a hidden, shocking interview with the BBC's Panorama show. She spoke about her difficulties with bulimia, postpartum depression, and the terrible loneliness of her existence in the royal family with painful honesty. And then, she spoke the words that would shock the monarchy to its core. When asked whether Camilla had anything to do with the end of her marriage, she answered in a way that was both heartbreaking and simple. Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. That one statement was like a thunderclap. It validated what everyone thought and changed Diana overnight. She was no longer a sad victim. She was a symbol of power and persistence. She had gotten her voice back, and in doing so, she had shown how callous and unfeeling the institution was that had sought to silence her. The interview was an act of war against the establishment, and the Queen was so angry that she ordered the pair to get a divorce right away. Diana started a new life after losing her Royal Highness title, but not her fame. She put all of her efforts into helping others, fighting for everything from raising awareness about HIV/AIDS to getting landmines banned. Her kindness and honesty touched people all around the world. Diana's fame shone greater than ever, but Charles's reputation faded. She wasn't the Princess of Wales anymore. She was the Queen of people's hearts. Sadly, her journey ended just as she was starting to build her new independent life. Diana died in a vehicle incident in Paris on August 31, 1997. The globe was flooded with sorrow like never before. A lot of flowers turned the gates of Buckingham Palace into a public shrine. People were angry when the royal family didn't say anything at first. The Queen stayed in Balmoral and the flagpole at the palace stayed barren, showing how out of touch the monarchy was with the people. People were angry at Charles, the man who was said to have broken Diana's heart. People booed him in public and the press was harsh. At one point it seemed like the monarchy itself may not survive the scandal. When Charles eventually showed up following behind Diana's coffin with his 2 young kids, the world witnessed a family that had been shattered and was being punished in public. But even that picture couldn't make the anger go away. Diana became a martyr when she died. Her legacy of kindness and compassion will always be a standard by which the royals, particularly Charles, will be evaluated. The ghost's long reign. After Diana died, the palace ran a lengthy, well-planned public relations operation called Operation Ritz to fix Charles's reputation and make his relationship with Camilla seem real. At first, she was a friend, and later she became a wife. In 2005, they were married in a civil wedding that was rather low-key compared to the huge event in 1981. People's opinions changed with time. Queen Elizabeth II made a smart step to protect the monarchy's future by saying it was her sincere wish that Camilla be acknowledged as queen consort when Charles became king. The rebranding worked out really well. Camilla was shown to be a loyal, down-to-earth wife who had finally made Charles happy after a long time of being unhappy. But the shadow of Diana has never really gone away. People are aware of the tragic irony of the situation, now that Charles is king and Camilla is queen. The lady who was previously called a villain now wears a crown, which is the last painful twist in a narrative where many people think there were no real victors. Charles put Diana's life on the line for duty, but then he broke duty for Camilla. Diana's marriage was loveless, which left her heartbroken. For decades, people publicly insulted Camilla. Diana's shadow hangs over the new reign. Every story on King Charles and Queen Camilla always talks about the past. Diana's ability to empathize with others and connect with them easily is still the standard. Charles, who is more formal and quiet, has a hard time meeting this level. You can see this in the lives of his boys. Prince William carefully balances his responsibility to the crown with the warmth and contemporary parenting style he learned from his mother. Catherine, his wife, and the new Princess of Wales, has to deal with a job that will always be defined by her predecessor. She pays tribute to Diana while still making her own way. The damage is far worse for Prince Harry. He has made it clear that the way the media treats his wife Meghan is like the way they treated his mother, which he thinks caused her death. In his words, his choice to leave the royal family was a measure to protect himself and stop history from repeating itself. The rift between the brothers is one of the most obvious and terrible effects of the tragedy that started decades ago. When Charles confessed in 1994, the monarchy's private sadness became public property. He was admitting that his heart had always belonged to someone else. Some people today see it as a moment of misguided honesty, an effort to explain, if not justify, what he did. Some others regard it as the last terrible proof that he betrayed Diana. People who know the king say he feels very bad about the anguish he caused, and that he looks back on his first marriage with a lot of sadness. But for millions, it's too little and too late. King Charles III finally got the crown he had been waiting for all his life. He has the lady he has always loved with him. but the ghost of the princess he didn't love will always define his rule. Her sad tale of loss and betrayal is a more compelling and lasting tragedy than any royal crowning. The secret is out, and it has been for a long time. People are still paying for that reality. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.